Type declarations. What are they? We were so used to having PHP figure that out for us that most of us forgot what they actually mean. You, as a programmer, can now specify what type of data type you want to store or return. Finally, Java makes this a requirement, but it's optional in PHP. You can use it or not. It's really up to you. If you do use it and you specify the wrong data type, however, then what you declared, PHP will throw an error. As of PHP 7, we can add return type declarations, meaning that you can specify what the function or method will return. Type declarations also allow functions to specify what type of data type the parameter will accept. As of PHP 7, PHP will throw a type error exception if the incorrect data type is presented. To specify a type declaration, just add the type in front of the parameter. Any type can be allowed to accept null values as long as the parameter has a default null value. Now that we have a decent overview, let's move into some code examples. We'll start by copying over the German Shepherd class from our previous tutorial and pasting it into this new file. You guys don't have to do this if you're working on one example, one file, and just keep working on that file, but to kind of separate everything out, I'm doing it. For the first example, we can specify that the following parameter needs to be an integer value. So we can use the int type declaration before the energy level parameter name. Just like that. As simple as that. Now let's go to the bottom. Let's go ahead and instantiate our German Shepherd class. And then what we'll do is we will call that sleep function and then pass, for example, 10. Let's go ahead and open that up in our browser. Hit type declaration. There we go. I'm sleeping. If we go back and we try to pass something else, like for example, Dino, and we come back over here, hit refresh. There we go. Uncaught type error, argument 1 passed to German Shepherd sleep must be of the type int, but string was given. So it knows that the type that needed to be passed was an integer, but we gave it a string. So that is exactly what type declaration does. Now we can also specify what data type the method is expected to return. Since we know that this method will always return a string, let's do iColor. We can add a string return type declaration to the method to make sure that the string is always returned. If we try to return something different, PHP will throw an error. So how do we specify that what we need to return here is a string? Actually pretty simple. After the function and before the opening curly brace, you put a colon and then whatever you're returning. So for example, string. For readability sake, a lot of the times what I like to do is move this open curly brace on the next line. A lot of people already program this way. I think this sends a much clearer message. So it says get iColor. It's going to return a string, and there's the string that it's returning. So let's go ahead and call this method gsdog get iColor, and come over here, hit refresh, and of course nothing is displayed because it's not an echo statement, it's a return statement. So we have to say echo gsdog get iColor. Let's hit refresh again, and there it is, brown. If we come back up here to our iColor, and let's say we change that to the number 15, save it, come over here, hit refresh. It's going to return a 15 just because it's converting it into a string. Let's see if it will do that with something like a multi-dimensional array. Come back over here, hit refresh, and there it is. Uncaught error, return type must be of type string, array was returned. So sometimes PHP will convert certain data types. I can remember between strings and integers, it's always a little tricky, but if you're returning something like an array, it's definitely not going to do that. We'll modify the next method to return a string as well, since we know that it will always return a string. It's either going to be a string yes or a string no. So again, colon, followed by the return type, which is string, save it, and we can say the same thing. Echo gs dog does shed. And I will also be adding break tags after each one of these. Put an echo break right there, just so it's a little bit clearer. Hit refresh, sleeping, brown, and yes. For our last example in here, this method returns an array, so we can specify that it's going to return an array. Just like that. Move this down, and then we can bar dump just to see if there were any kind of errors. It would not allow us, if it was returning, for example, a string, an array that was expected, it would throw an error. So we can say bar dump gs.dog get scientific classification. Go back to the browser, hit refresh, and there it is. It's returning an array. So that's pretty much it. We're gonna take a look at our car class as well, but the German Shepherd class is finished for the most part. Probably do some more modifications a little bit later on. Let's go ahead and copy that. Our type declarations, save it, and go back up to the top. So you've already received a brief introduction to type declarations in our car class before. We made adjustments to the properties pretty early on, so let's finish everything else right here. So here we're specifying all the different types. Let's scroll to the bottom and let's start looking at our function or methods. I keep saying functions because I keep looking at the word function, but it's a method. It's a method inside the class. Each method will return a string, so we'll just have to modify them to state that they're returning the string data type. So we'll just say this is returning a string. Turn off is also always going to be returning a string. And if you don't believe me, even though we're modifying something right here, the actual return statements, they return strings. Drive returns a string, and get, make, and model returns a string. Save that, test it out. So we'll test out something pretty simple. So we'll say Nissan is equal to new car. Nissan make is equal to Nissan. Nissan model is equal to 240SX. And then we could say, well, since it's returning echo, Nissan get, make, and model. So I know we haven't called this method before, so let's go ahead and do it this time. Let's go to the browser, hit refresh, and there it is. It's returning our Nissan 240SX. Just like before, if we were to modify this to return anything other than a string, like an array, and then we go and try to refresh it, we get that return value must be of the type string array returned. Change that back. And that is that. I mean, type declarations, like I said, in PHP, it's relatively new. In other languages, it's been around for quite some time.